So hey and what's up guys, I'm your friend Code Cruz and today we are going to be building a very simple shopping cart application using React and Redux, right? The main point of this video is to show you the effectiveness or the reason why people use Redux, right? So what actually is Redux? Redux is basically a state management library, right? That basically helps in effective management of the state, right? Um, Let it be React or let it be any other library. Like we are using for the sake of this video, we are using React along with Redux, right? So basically, what are the use cases where we should be considering Redux, right? So like if you want, you can use Redux along with React in any application you want, right? But like but it is more of a preferred to use Redux in those applications where you have to manage a lot of states, right? And you want centralized state management system, right? Like a single point of truth from where you can basically be managing all these states and all that. So yeah, you can basically make use of the traditional methods of like sending props from one component to another and then managing it. But this approach becomes messy when you are working on some complex applications, like, for example, an e-commerce store where there is a lot going on, right? So, for example, if you are just clicking on add to cart button, so there will be a lot going on. Like in the cart page, that particular product should be there, right? Like once you click on add to cart and once your product has been successfully added to your cart, so when you go to the cart page, you have to like see that okay immediately it has been listed on the cart page as well as the the counter that is there in the the cart symbol which you basically see in the nav bar that should also update. Like for example, if my cart is zero and now if I'm adding a cart adding a product to my cart, it should update it to one. So there's a lot going on there. And there basically if we like follow the traditional method of state management, it really becomes through props, it really becomes messy and very the code becomes really messy and you have even literally be having a hard time to manage them. So for that reason we basically try to use redux in these cases, which basically centralizes all these states into one place, to which the components that particularly require those states can subscribe to, and basically can make the necessary updates and also can show the updated data as well, right? So okay, let's try to understand this problem. Okay, so let's try to draw and understand what exactly happens in a a simple shopping cart web application which we are going to be building in this video. So okay, so let me draw a file called app.jsx. That is basically the the entry point. Like we whenever we create a React app, there is a app.jsx file. And now let's create two more boxes, right? Uh, wait a minute, let's copy this. Okay, this is okay. Let's paste it. Okay, and also we let's copy one will be here. And let's copy remote. Okay, wait a minute. I will explain this as well. Okay, so this is going to be a home page. Let's say, and let it be a start page. Okay, uh, and let this be the nav bar basically, and it will consist of a body. And this in the cart page also will be having a nav bar, and then basically the cart products displayed, right? And let's take an arrow that is gonna connect all of them. The if you have worked on React, you basically know like there is an app.js. It's like the component tree you basically understand, right? There is a app.js, then there is a home page under it. Then there's a cart page. Then that the home page also has certain components like the navbar. Then it has the body, like and so on and so forth, right? So let's connect them. Um, let's copy and paste it. Let's get up that. Paste it. And so let's connect this. And yeah, we are done. So basically, what happens is, so for example, so this is the app.jsx under which there will be home, under which there will be cart. So let's come to the home. So home will consist of a navbar, and the navbar we can we will be having cart counter that will basically count the number of products you have added to your cart. And in the body, what we'll be having is basically the product cards, array of products that will be displayed, right? Like whenever we visit like you know e-commerce store, you basically see a bunch of products that are being listed there. So that is basically being listed on the body. So now, for example, like whenever we are clicking on those products, like for example, add to cart. So what should it do? For example, whenever we are listing those things to the cart, so like for example, we are having some, okay, we are having something, some state called as cart, right? Cart, set cart. And whenever we are just adding the product to it, so our set cart, in the set cart array, this products get added, right? So now the question is, how do we pass this card value, like sync this card value with the, in the navbar also, as I mentioned, we have a cart along with the value, right? Cart icon along with the value, that how many items are there in the cart. So if we click on add product, so the cart value should update, right? If it's zero, and if we are adding one product, it should update to one. If we are adding two products, it should update to two. So like how do we send this thing to send this card value, exactly this card value to the navbar, so that we can actually render the updated list, right? So you might say, let's say you might say that, okay, so what I will be doing is I will be taking this to the home page. I'll be defining this state in the home page, and okay, wait a minute. I'll be defining the state in the home page, and then from there I can pass this as a prop to the navbar. I can pass this prop to the body. Okay. So now, if I say that, what would you do, like when you have to actually render this product to the cart page? How do we do that? So the straight answer you would say me is, okay, let's not put it to home page. Let's put it to app.jsx, right? So, okay, wait a minute. And okay, wait a minute. Why is it not coming like that? Okay, if you paste it here. Okay. So now you might say that, okay, we will basically be, placing it here. And from here only we'll be passing this as a prop to the home. And then also we'll be passing the cart as a prop to the navbar. And then we'll be passing the cart as a prop to the body as well. And so on and so forth. So don't you notice here what it's happening? We are passing the cart to home, which actually doesn't need the cart value, right? Home component doesn't need the cart value. The cart value is being required by only the navbar and the body. The Similarly, this cart page doesn't require the value, but this two components require the value, right? So basically, here comes the problem. So this problem is basically known as prop drilling, right? Basically, we are unnecessarily providing this thing to a huge number of components as a prop, and then and then we are like providing it to the actual components which actually requires these things. So this is basically known as prop drilling. So what could we have done? Like we could have like, set a single source of truth, and from here, from there only we can basically access the data, like the card data, from those components which actually needs it, right? What I'm talking about is, uh, we could have, okay, wait a minute, connect. Okay. What I'm saying is we could have taken, instead of like doing this what we call as prop drilling, we could have a single store, right, where this cart and all the data, whatever we are needing, we can have this centralized store from where we can basically, fetch the data. Like, for example, if the navbar needs it, it can fetch it from the store. And, if the body needs it, it will fetch from the store, and so on and so forth. The card products and all these things, they can easily fetch from the store. That's exactly where Redux comes into play. Like, this is not actually the diagram, like, the detailed diagram of how Redux works, but basically just to give you an idea of what benefits exactly Redux offers, and what can we basically do in using Redux, like how it makes our lives easier, right? So if I have to go for a simplified diagram of Redux, it's basically quite simple, right? Like, for example, if I am having a button, the name of the button is add to cart, right? Whenever I click on this button, what happens in React? Like, if you have worked with React, you definitely know there is some handler function attached to this thing, right? Uh, Handler function gets invoked, right? Handler function is attached to the add to cart thing, and it's get invoked, right? So let's make it like a handler function, handler function. Okay, okay, this is the handler function. Let's keep it. Let's increase its size, and yeah, let's have the handler function that gets basically invoked. Like, if I are clicking on this add to cart, the handler function gets invoked, and what it does is it basically dispatches some event, right? It basically dispatches some event. Like, for example, the event name is add to cart event, and it sends this event to the store, which we were talking about here, like the store, which is the centralized unit that basically stores all the states and all the data, right? Let's call this as a right. Let's call this a store, right? Now the store basically stores it, right? It doesn't really know what to do with this event that has been dispatched by the handler function, right? The event that is being dispatched by the handler function, this store doesn't know how to like react to it, right? It just stores the data. So what it does is it gets the thing, and it passes on to another thing that is basically, you know, the reducer, right? The reducer, right? It sends it to the reducer and tells that, okay, this is the event, and this is basically being generated, and now you know what to do with it, and perform the necessary actions, and you know and then send it back to me, right? So the reducer basically performs the necessary operations or the things that is being required to be performed based on this event, and then it sends it back to the store, right? Like, the store, it updates the data in the store, right, after handling the event. And then what this store does is, and this, whatever the updates that the store has, is basically being sent to, let's say, the components, right? Component is being basically sent to the components, right? Is being basically sent to this is a component. Like, we can create multiple components like this, like control C, control V. Okay, we can send this to multiple components, like the components that have subscribed to this store, right? They basically get the updated changes that happened in the store, like, that are basically being done by the reducer. And basically we get the updates. Like if I have to give you a overview or an example, that is basically, like if I'm clicking on add to cart, and now let's say the cart, whatever we have, the cart has a value of zero, like the cart is empty. That is basically has been subscribed to the store. So it basically gets the handler function, dispatches the event, the store sends it to the reducer, and the reducer performs the necessary action and updates the value in the store. And since that particular cart has been subscribed to the store. So whatever the changes, whatever the updates that has been performed that has been reflected in the store will also be reflected in the components. That is basically our cart is empty, right? We are clicking on add to cart and we'll be seeing that the product has been added to the cart as well as the cart value has changed from 0 to 1. Again, we add another thing to the cart. The thing changes from 1 to 2, right? So that's how it works. This is basically a simple overview of how the, you know, uh, Redux works, basically. So we will be going on to our code editor to check out, just start with the coding part and, check out how can we actually, build this um, simple shopping cart application using React. So let's get started. So now we are in our VS Code and now we are going to be creating our React application. So let's create the boilerplate real quick using npm beat, npm create beat @latest. Okay. So it will be creating our great application, right? That is basically the boilerplate for the starter template for our React application. So let's wait for some time. And it's asking me to provide any project name. So I want to create it in my current directory. So I will be providing a dot and then let the package name be the default name, whatever it is providing. And now it's asking us to select a framework. So let's select React. And along with that, we'll be working on JavaScript. So now what we need to do is we need to npm install, right? That will be installing our dependencies. So let's wait. It's gonna take a couple of minutes to install. So our dependencies has been installed. So now what are we gonna do is start our development server. So we can use npm run dev to start our development server at port 5173, as we can see. So now let's start our run. Okay. So let's go to local host. So as we can see, wait a minute, our starter template has already loaded, right? So we are gonna remove all of this, right? So let's go to src. Let's go to our app.js, and this is the code which we need to remove basically. So okay, let's remove it, and also let's empty the app.css. Okay, and the index.css as well. Okay. We have removed this, and now uh, for this we are going to be using Tailwind CSS, right? Since we get some built-in components using Tailwind CSS, so we are going to be using Tailwind CSS for this. So, okay. But before that, we need basically two pages, right? One is basically the home page where all our products are going to be listed, and the cart page where all the products that are in the cart are going to be listed. So let's install React Router DOM package that is gonna allow us to do so. So let's do npm I React Router DOM. So it's gonna take a couple of seconds to install. Let's wait. So our React Router DOM has been installed. So now let's configure our routes. So let's move on to main.jsx, and here we are gonna wrap it in browser router, right? We are basically wrapping our apps component to browser router. And now let's move on to our app.jsx, and here, so let's first of all create a folder called components. So there will be one component called as the home.jsx. That is basically the page, home page, and one page is going to be card.jsx. So let's provide it with a starter code. Let's do the same for our home.jsx. Okay, why didn't it work? Okay, it worked. And now let's configure the routes for that. We're going to be using routes. Okay, route. Okay, and here we are going to provide the path that is the default path. And for this, we are going to provide the element as well that is going to be our home. And similarly, let's consider the path slash cart. And for this, we want the element to be cart, right? And now let's save this and let's test it out whether or not it's working or not. So as we can see home here. And if I provide slash cart, we can see cart here. So that means it's working fine, right? Okay, let's refresh it. Okay, yeah, it's working fine. So now we have configured our routes. So now it's time to configure basically the tailwind, right? So let's open up a tab here and let's do tailwind CSS Beat. Okay, tailwind CSS Beat, install CSS tailwind CSS with Beat, right? So here we are having this commands which we are going to be copying and pasting. So let's do it. It is gonna take a couple of minutes, and so the first command has been executed successfully. So now it's time for the second command, right? Let's just press enter, and it is also going to be executing, and it is gonna create us a tailwind config file. So okay, so now let's move on to the documentation, and here is the thing which we need to put in our tailwind configuration file. So, okay, let's replace this with this one. And one more thing we need to do is in index.css, we need to provide this. So let's move on to our index.css and paste these three lines. So now we need to basically restart our development server in order to see the changes take place. Like if we want to use Tailwind, so like we just need to restart our server. So let's restart it. And yeah, let's move on to There is one. Let's refresh it. So okay, it has loaded successfully. So now we have installed Tailwind, right? So now it's time to add the build the UI, right? So for that we are going to be going in dev UI where we can find some Tailwind components. Let's first of all search for the navbar, and we want a very minimal navbar like this. So let's click on React. Let's copy it, and now we need to basically create a navbar or JSX. And okay, let's paste it. And okay, it's working. Now, so like we need to change it like export default function, and it's gonna be navbar. And we don't actually need the menu items, so let's remove it. And let's remove the menu items thing from here as well, right? Let's remove it. And there is one more place where there is menu item. Okay, it's here, right? Yes. Yeah, let's remove it along with the div. Okay, and also change the button text to cart and cart. Okay, and instead of div UI, we're gonna provide my top, and here also we're gonna provide cart. So you might ask why we have to change it twice. So basically, one is for the mobile view, one is for the mobile view, and another is for the desktop view. So that's why two-sided code is provided. So, and one more thing we need to do is we need to install Lucid React library if we want to use this icons. So let's install it. npm I Lucid React. Okay. So our Lucid React library has been installed. So let's move on to the Lucid React website, Lucid React, and we can find icons from there, right? So let's search for car. I guess this one looks fine. So let's copy the JSX, and from here let's provide shopping bag. Yeah, and let's remove this SVG and let's paste it and below also. Okay, I think it's cool. And now let's move on to our phone. And now let's call this part. And now let's check. Okay, let's refresh it. Okay, so our navbar has loaded. It looks fine. And now let's move on to our dev UI and let's find some cards, right? Where we want to basically display our products. So, okay, click on card. And yeah, and I guess this card looks great. So let's pick it up and let's create a component named product card. So product card dot JSX and let's paste it here. Let's save it and let's name it as product card and export default function product card. And now in the home, we basically take a div. Let's call this product card component and let's check how is it. And yeah, it looks fine, no issues. And now in the navbar, we want to go to our cart page whenever we are clicking on cart, right? So now what do we do? Let's wrap it with link, right? And let's wrap this one with link and to link to slash cart route, right? And now let's import link as well from React router down. Okay. Now let's save it. Okay. And now if we click on cart, it's gonna take us to the cart page. And now we can notice we haven't added the UI for the cart as well. So let's add some UI for the cart. Okay. So let's move on to our cart and now let's add some UI. So I can get the UI for the cart page from here only. As I can see, okay, let's get into cart. Okay. Yeah. So we got the UI for this. So this one looks minimal and fine. So let's pick this one, right? So let's pick this one and let's paste it here. It's fine. Now we are having some dummy products here. So no issues. Let's start and let's do it as export default. And if I save it, let's check it. Okay, it has loaded successfully and it looks decent, it looks decent. And we need to make a few changes. We'll be making it later on. So now the question is, we need to populate this products, right? We do not need to like we do not want to show one product, right? We need to populate it with some product. So we can get those products from fake store API, right? So let's go to fake store API, fake store API. Okay. So from there we can fetch some dummy products to be displayed. So let's move on to docs. And here we can see get all products, get a single product. So let's click on get all products. And this is the API endpoint which we need actually. So now we need to fetch the products, right? So let's move on to home. And let's first of all create a state called products, set products, use state, and it's gonna be an empty array. And let's create a function here. Obviously, it's going to be an asynchronous function. And this function name would be fetch products. And let's do some const response await fetch. And let's paste this endpoint here. And const data await response dot JSON. And let's console log data. And now let's use effect to run this function as soon as our page loads. Let's have an empty dependency array here. And we're gonna do fetch products. So let's test it, right? Let's open our inspect element and now let's check. And here we get an array of 20 products as you can see. So now let's, instead of this console log, okay, let it be. We need to basically figure out the structure of the data that we have received. So let's do set products as data. Okay. Now we need to basically map them, right? Let's map this data. So let's map it. And here we are gonna do products dot map and it's going to be product and let's put our product card here. So it's going to be now requiring a key prop. So let's provide it with this key prop that is going to be product dot ID. I guess we are having a product dot ID. Yeah, we are having a product dot ID. Cool. So and we will be providing a product data to product as a prop. And yeah, if we save it and let's move on to product card and let's destructure the data as product and let's remove this image. We are going to provide a product image, right? So product, optional chaining, image, and instead of alt, we are gonna provide a product, optional chaining, title, right? So here it is written as about MacBook. We don't need this arrow up thing. We are going to be providing a product.title here, product.title, and here let's provide a product.description, product.description, and here there are multiple hashtags. Let's remove these two hashtags and then let's provide a product.category, product.category. Okay, and here instead of this read button, let's name it as add to cart. That makes more sense, right? So I guess it's fine now. Let's check it out. Okay, our product has been rendered, but there is an issue here. Basically, our product has been rendered as this rules. So let's do display flex here, right? So now let's move on to home and let's provide some CSS class name flex and flex wrap. If we save it, okay, cool, but we need some margin in between there. So what do we do? Let's move on to, also I need a margin top. It's basically sticking to the lambda, right? So let's do margin top of 6. Yeah, that works. So now let's move on to product card and let's provide it a margin of 6, let's say. And also we want these things to be aligned at center. So let's move on to home and let's align into center. Justify center. And yeah, it's working fine. So we have worked with the basic CSS, right? So now it's time to integrate our Redux, right? So let's get started with it. So for getting started with Redux, what do we need is, let's go to the Redux documentation, right? And here, there is get started, right? So let's click on get started. And what other things we need to install is we need to basically install these two commands, right? Let's copy this one. Uh, let's install it. npm. Okay, I've copied it. There is Redux.js toolkit, and along with that, what more do we need is React Redux. So React Redux. So it will take some time to install. Let's wait. Also, let me remove this console log. We won't need it anymore. So our React Redux and the Redux toolkit has been installed. So first things first, what we need to do is, as I have mentioned you in the diagram, so what does Redux have? Like first of all, we need to create a store, right? So okay, let's create a directory here named Redux, and inside of that, let's create another directory called store, and inside of that, let's create store.js. Okay, and inside of Redux, okay, let's first of all configure our store. So how do we configure our store? Where it shows configured store. Okay, there is TypeScript quick start here. So let's click on it. Although we are not using TypeScript, but things are kind of a similar, right? Okay, as we can see, how can we configure our store? So import configure store from Redux.js toolkit. So let's copy this and let's paste it here. And here are multiple, like, post reducer, comments reducer and stuff. We don't need it. We are not going to be needing it right now. First of all, we need to create slices and stuff after that. So in a way, we have basically initialized our store, we can say. And there are export type, root state, app dispatch. We won't be requiring this because we are not using TypeScript. If any one of you is using TypeScript, so you can definitely copy this. So since we are using JavaScript, we don't need to copy this, right? So now let's save it. And also we need to wrap our app.jsx with a not yeah app.jsx with a provider, right? So let's move on to main.jsx. We need to wrap our app component with a provider, or else we won't be getting access to our store. So okay, let's wrap it up with a provider, provider, and let's wrap it up. And there is going to be a store. What is the store? The store is the one we have just initialized. Okay. Yeah. And now, what's the next thing that we need? The next thing that we need is we need to create a slice. So now you might be asking me, what is a slice? The slice is nothing but just a feature, right? For example, here, what are we working with, right? We are working with the cart. So cart is our slice. For example, if you are working with some social media platform, you're building something. So the slice might be posts, the slice might be likes, and a slice, there can be multiple slices in your application, right? So let's create another folder inside of Redux, that is gonna be named as slice. Right? And here, let's create a slice named as card.js. And okay, let's check out in the documentation. There is hooks, we don't need it right now. Let's first of all create the slice and stuff. So okay, let's import create slice, and now let's do export const, right? I guess yeah, const cart slice, and there it is going to be create slice, and inside of which we are going to be having a name. Let's name it as cart, and we are going to be having an initial state. So what is the initial state of a cart? So cart is basically going to be having an array, right? Array of objects. So the initial state is going to be an empty array. And now we are going to be having reducers as well, right? So reducers will basically be comprising of the functions, right? The as mentioned in while, like, I was explaining in the diagram, reducers basically comprise of the functions, right? Like the add to cart functionality, the remove from cart functionality. So it's basically the functionalities it is gonna contain. So let's name our functionality as add to cart. It is going to be having two parameters. One is the state, one is the action. So state is basically the current state of our cart. For example, our cart is containing one product, right? So the current state of the cart is basically it comprises of a single product. Now I am basically creating an add to cart button of some other product, and another product gets into the cart, right? So the new product data is basically the action, right? Action contains an attribute called like not an attribute, action, yeah, an attribute only. Action contains a payload that is basically the incoming data in the cart, right? So and the logic which we'll be writing in this add to cart function is basically how do we handle that data and put it in our stream. So first of all, we need to basically make a check const existing product. We need to check whether the product actually exists in our cart or not. So state dot filter and will be having items dot id and not like I guess could be triple equals action dot payload dot id, right? So if the existing product dot length is going to be zero, that means the product doesn't exist in our cart. So we are going to be just adding that product to the cart, right? Action dot fill, right? That is basically the payload data which we are going to be pushing to the cart. And finally, we are gonna return the state, right? So if the product already exists in our cart, then we are directly returning the old state. And if the product is already is not existing in the cart, we are going to be adding that product and then returning the final state. So now let's write the logic for remove from cart. It has also a similar function containing of state action, and it is it is very straightforward function. We are going to be returning the state dot filter items where the items dot id should not match with uh, action dot payload dot, right. So basically we are filtering the you know filtering our cart, right, from the product which we want to remove, right. That's basically the logic. So yeah, we are done with it. I need to export a couple of things, right? Export const the functions we have created, add to cart and remove from cart slice dot actions, right? These are basically the actions, right? The add to cart action and the remove from cart. And let's export default the cart slice dot reduce it, right? Let's save it. And now let's move on to the documentation and check. We have basically created it, right? And now let's move on to hooks. We need to basically create hooks as well, right? So let's create another directory here as hooks. And here we are going to be creating a file called hooks.js. And we are going to be importing use dispatch and use selector. Now you might be asking me, what is this use dispatch use selector? Use selector is used when we want to basically, extract or get some data from the store. And use dispatch is used whenever we want to perform some action to the store, like adding to cart, removing from cart, right? So for that we use dispatch, and for use selector we are using it to retrieve some data from the store. That's simple. So here we can see export const user dispatch and with types. So we don't need actually types, right? We are not using types here. So let's do export const. Let's name it what they have named it. They have named it as user dispatch. We can also follow the same name. You can name it anything you want. User dispatch and use dispatch, right? And export const use app selector, and it's gonna take the selector and use selector. Okay, and now we need to basically provide some data to the store as well, which we have put empty. So it's going to be a card, and it's going to be having a card slice. Okay, let's save it. I guess it's going to be not in curly braces since we have export default this thing. Okay, now I guess we have successfully set up our store. So now let's use the store data and also let's use dispatch to add to cart and remove from cart. So what do we need to do, right? So now first of all, let's move on to our navbar, right? So first things first is uh, we are having this cart, right? Along with that, I want to attach some value that basically displays how many items are there in our cart. So what do we do here? We need to basically do const cart data equals use app selector. That is going to take a state and then state dot cart, right? So okay, let's test it out. There's a cart, and here I want to provide cart data. So what the cart data is going to be? It is going to be an array of objects, right? So let's provide cart data dot length just just to provide us with how many items it actually holds, right? The same thing here also. Okay, cart data. That's one. Let's save it. Let's check. As you can see, it shows us zero since we have no items in our cart. So we also need to add functionality like add to cart and remove from cart, right? So let's move on to our product card. And now let's import this thing. Const uh, card data. We use selector. And sorry, it's not going to be use selector. We have used use app selector, and it's going to be taking state dot card. And also we are going to be using this path use our dispatch, right? And now what are we going to be doing? So now we are going to be doing add to cart, right? So now let's add the on click handler to it, and it's going to be taking dispatch, and along with that it is going to be taking the add to cart, right? Whatever function we have created, right? Add to cart from Redux license cart. Okay, so add to cart, and it's also going to be a function, right? So we have to invoke that function, and we have to provide what? We have to provide the action that is basically the payload, right? So the payload is basically the product, right? We have passed in this component the product prop. So that is basically the product data. So we are passing it here as well. And we are going to be using a conditional rendering here, right? So basically, if the product already exists in the cart, so we should be displayed a button as like remove from cart. So let's copy this button and okay, and let's name it okay, get a minute, remove from cart. And here instead of add to cart, we want remove from cart. And here we need to provide some condition that is basically card data dot filter uh, items items dot id is triple equals is triple equals the product, that is the product data dot id. This basically this expression basically returns as an array whose length is triple equals zero. That means the product doesn't exist in the cart. So we would love to provide this add to cart, right? else we want to provide this remove from cart, right? So, okay, let's save it and let's check it basically. So now if I click on add to cart, as we can see, cart shows one. If I click on add to cart, if I click on add to cart, these all are converted to remove from cart, right? So randomly let's take this one as well. So our cart has four. Now if I click on remove from cart, our cart value goes to three. The fun part, cart value goes to two. So now we are basically providing, like, we are basically pushing the data into the cart and removing the data from the cart. So now what we need to do is we need to basically display the data here as well, right? So that's pretty easy. We can do it. We can move to our cart.jsx and here we actually don't need this products, right? So okay, that's cool. So we can remove it as well. Let's remove it since it's unnecessary, right? So now let's do const uh, cart data, use selector state state dot cart and not use selector really. We have made a mistake. It's use app selector, right? Let's remove the tool selector, we don't need it. Now let's basically instead of the products, let's use cart data and here it's named as product, let it be product. There's product.id and it's going to be product.image. It's going to be product.title. It's going to be product.title as well. Yeah, it's missing the color. We don't have any color here. So it's going to be product price and let's provide a dollar sign here. And here, okay, the remove thing is perfect. Let's remove this heart, okay, and total amount and all this. Okay, that's fine. Also, there's back to shop thing, there's checkout, and in back to shop we can basically wrap it with the link tags, right? That can basically take us back to our home page. To, okay, and what more we need to do is, okay, here there is remove. So this is basically the remove button. So we can actually add a dispatch thing to this. Dispatch, use app dispatch, and here we are going to be removing the data like the item from the cart as well. So this is the button and we can add an on click handler to it and it's going to be having a dispatch and remove from cart, right? And I guess yeah, we are also having the product data, right? This is basically the product data. So we can pass it and visit it. Yeah, that's cool. And here also we are having this amount thing, right? So we can use reduce, right? The reduce function to do this calculation. That is, it's going to be dollar only, right? Since we are like considering all the figures in dollars. So what we can do here is we can do cart data dot reduce, and here it is going to be accumulator current and accumulator plus current dot price, and also we have to provide an initial value that is going to be zero. I guess yeah, that works. That works. So now, yep. So now I guess we have added these items previously in our cart. So let's move on to back to shop. And yeah, as we can see this, and if I add two more things to this, if we move to the cart, we can see all of this. Total amount is this. Okay, we can use math.flow since it's the value is like way too big. So let's do math.flow to basically like sum it up to some decent value. Okay, okay, that looks cool. So yeah, and I guess we can remove also from here. If I click on this, it's removed. And if I move back to stock, that jacket thing will be showing as active now. Okay, so yeah, that's working fine. And let's remove all of them. What happens? Let's check. And yeah, it's empty, so we can provide some data to it as well, right? Inside here, we can provide some data that is cart is empty, and along with that, we could provide some condition here, right? If our cart data, sorry, cart data dot len is equals 0, then we can show cart is empty. Yeah, it shows cart is empty. And we can increase this text size like using class name, font, bold, text to external. Okay, that looks great. And if I go to back to shop and if I add to cart, we can basically see, yeah, if I now remove it, the cart is empty. So yeah, that's how we have successfully created our shopping cart web application, which is very, very simple and using React and Redux, right? So yeah, so you can create your own e-commerce store, right? So you can basically create your own full stack e-commerce store. So while creating it, basically to handle this state and stuff, you can use Redux, right? There are certain alternatives to Redux as well. Like I guess there is one, I guess there is a stand or something like that. There's a library. So that is also similar. Like you can do all this same stuff with lesser amount of code, right? So yeah, so that's all for today's video. And so if you have learned something new from this video, do consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to this channel. So that's all for today's video. I will see you in the next one. Thank you.